Alright, we're going to jump into creating the start menu for our Rolleeball game. Looks something like this, where we're able to have a start and quit button, and we can click start, and it loads our game up. The first thing we want to do is in our assets, go to our scenes folder, and we can just right click in the scenes area, whether you have it displayed big icons or small, and we're going to create a new scene. We're going to name this main menu with a capital M and capital M. Hit enter, and then we need to double click this scene to open it up. So once you have that open, we can go ahead and create our first button. So we're going to go to our hierarchy and right click, and we'll go to UI, and we're going to do a button with Text Mesh Pro, which will give us some advanced features for controlling the text and font and all that. So when we create the button, it's going to automatically create our canvas for us. So this is going to be our main menu canvas in our main menu scene. So I'm going to go ahead and name this main menu canvas. Now the first thing that we may want to set is you got to know how are you exporting this game, or what platform are you going for, what devices, right, which will kind of help you set this up so you don't have to keep coming back and making changes, although that's an option as well. So our render mode, screen space overlay, so we want our actual canvas to be overlaid with the camera. The canvas scaler component is how do we want our canvas to scale? Constant pixel size, well, we're going to change this, and we want to do scale with screen size. And that's, say, if we're doing this for WebGL or for a PC, right? Everybody might have a different monitor. But most commonly right now, 1080p, right? So we'll set up our resolution to be the default of 1080p. So we're going to do 1920 by 1080, which is the default resolution. And we're going to leave everything else the default size. Now, our game window here, we want to set this to 16 by 9, because if you have free aspect, it's just going to change based on what your scene view is, your monitor. So we're just going to change that to 16 by 9. And so our canvas currently, all of our UI for our canvas, UI elements are going to be underneath our canvas. It's going to be a child object. So we have a button, which also has text underneath it. So before we get into doing any other UI stuff, we just want to set up our canvas. We're going to go ahead and create an empty object in our hierarchy. So we're going to right click, and we will create, and we'll just do an empty. And we're going to name this Level Manager. You can go to your scripts folder. And we're going to right click and create a new script in this folder. And we're going to name this right away Level Manager, and hit enter. And then we're going to open this up. So no spaces. You want to make sure, again, your file name and the class name are exactly the same for every time that you create a script. Or if you rename a script, the class name has to be the same as the file name. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this comment here and this comment. We don't need those. And we're going to just go ahead and leave this set up the way it is. We're going to create our first method, and instead of start, it's going to be called load game. we're just going to load our game. We only have one level. And because we're going to call this from a button, we need this to be public. So this method we can be able to call load game. So an easy way of doing this would be to get the name of the scene and just load that scene, right? Load the scene that's called main menu, or load the scene that's called level 1. In order to do that, we need a new namespace. So we're going to, up here on line 4, do using the Unity engine dot scene management, okay? And this is a class that is going to allow us to be able to use the scene manager class, and then we can go dot, and we have this function or method called load scene, in which we have to have parentheses and then since we're loading the actual name of the scene, the name, it's a string of text, right? It's the actual name, so we have quotations. And the first scene, I named mine. This is where you have to go and look. So I'm going to go to my scenes. My main scene is called level 1. It's not open. Main menu is open. Let's save this too, Control S. But level 01, no spaces, is what I have. So here, I'll type in level 01, and it has to be exact, and then semicolon in that statement. So now, when we call this method, it will load the scene level 1. Although this won't work because there's a few other things that we have to set up. 1, the button, and 2, our build settings for having the final game actually working. So next up, we're going to do the public void, and instead of update, we're going to do load main menu. So a quick way, we could just copy this for the moment and load scene instead of level 01. This would be main menu. And I'm going to copy this, paste it, and instead of load main menu, maybe we're going to have a load game over. And so this is, we would have to create a scene called game over. So we have that there. And then next, you see this all the time on YouTube, right? And that is doing a, for the quit button, we're going to have a method public void quit. And if it does that, you just Control Z and go back. And you can look more into different ways, but for right now, we can just do application dot quit. And this is not going to work while in Unity, but we could do a debug.log and for texting purposes, we'll know that this button is working. And just a note, this is going to work well if we were building out a PC game. We're going to want to do something different for other applications or platforms, right? But for right now, we'll keep this in here. And there we go. We got an easy 30 lines of code for controlling this, so we got an extra one here. There we go. So that's nicely laid out. So we're going to save this. And then back on our level manager object here, I'm going to drag that script level manager onto my object. And then we're going to want to drag the level manager into our prefabs folder. Now I have a prefab of this, and man, I can't remember if I undid this or if I didn't do this, but you notice my transforms are crazy. So let's fix this. We always, when we create an empty, don't forget, or if you do, we can go back, but we want to do the 3 dots reset because we want to reset all of the transforms. And that's back to 0, and we're good to go, right? And it's just at the origin of the world. So we have our level manager set up, ready to go, and we have a prefab. Now, because this is a prefab and I just made the change here in my overrides, if it doesn't update automatically, you'll have to go to your overrides and click apply to all, okay? Now, we're going to go to our main menu canvas and then select our button. So this button, let's go ahead and set this up as our start button. Hit enter, we'll name that. And in our text, it just says button. We're going to type in start. And what we can do is I'm going to select my main menu canvas, hover my mouse in the scene view, and press F. Then I can go into 2D mode. So just clicking that 2D button. So now I get a good idea for that. I'm going to select my start button, and it's pretty small. I'm going to grab the Rect Transform tool up here at the top. And we could just scale that out. You notice the text doesn't change, but I get like a nice size button. There we go. So we have our button. So I'm kind of just looking at my scene and guessing the button. I kind of move it over. Okay, I got it scaled. Okay, but it's weirdly placed. What I can do is go to the Rect Transform gizmo here, and I can just do Shift and Alt to set the position and the pivot point to be the center of our canvas, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press W, and on the green axis, just, whoops, and you see it selected my text. So you got to catch that. Right now the text is selected. I don't want to move the text, so Control Z. We want to select the Start button and move the Start button down. So it's anchored to the center of our screen, but I want it a little bit lower. So you notice the grid is not exactly aligned to where my canvas is, and that's okay. So now what we could do is go to our text, and we could actually size this up. Let's see. So you could do auto size too, but then you can't control the size. But right now we have 27. I could say scale that up. The auto size was approximately 72. I'm just going to do 60 here. And our actual button component, if we select our start button, the button component on the button, we have some options here for normal color, highlighted color. So if I wanted it to be highlighted when my mouse hovers over it, I can just click this box and select maybe an orangish color based on the theme that I already have in mind. But right now it's just a template. So then when I click play, if I hover my mouse over it, it turns orange. Now, I do have these other, I forget what the defaults are, but I had already changed the normal color and pressed color and selected color, disabled color. So yours might be slightly different, but you could kind of make some changes here for just some simple button coloring. Now this is all based on the transition of using color tinting. If we had graphics, we could do separate graphics, a sprite for each one, and use sprite swap. And then there's also animation. But for right now, color tint is fine. We'll just leave that there. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this button, Control D. Whoops. and then press W and move it down. And then I'm going to grab my Rect Transform tool. And if you hold Alt, if you press Alt and hold it down, I can scale both sides at the same time and make it just a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to name this Quit Button. Drop down to the text. And then change it to Quit. And then maybe instead of 60, maybe I want to do 50. I guess the start does still look kind of small, so maybe we'll make that 72 to begin with. And there's other options here for changing the font or installing a new font and using that. We have using bold and all these other different options for this. Right, we could all do uppercase if need be, so we could do uppercase. I think I like that. So lots of different options here, changing the vertex color, color gradients. We have our spacing, alignments, and wrapping. So this is something very important that you can look up that has to do with if your text, your font, right, is bigger than the actual button area itself, or I should say there's like this yellow text box around here. So if your text, your font size is bigger than this box, then you would need to possibly change the settings here for it to still show, or just change the font size. You can always check that by just doing auto size and see what happens as well if your font has disappeared. Let's save where we're at, Control S, save that. Now, to get this working, we got two more steps. Number one is our start button doesn't have anything set up for when we click it to do anything. There's no on-click kind of action event. And then also, we have to actually set up our build settings for when we went to build this out as a PC game or for some other platform. So the first thing we're going to do is select the start button, and we're going to scroll down on our inspector to the on-click area. So this has a built-in already on-click method. So on-click, we want it to do something, and we can have a list of things. We're going to click the plus symbol and add, and here you see it says object. So what I'm going to do, I can drag in the level manager, or I can also click this target, go to scene, and I can select the level manager object here as well. But it has to be the object. If you attach the script, nothing will show here, at least in this version of Unity. So now we have no function. So we need to click no function. So it's looking at this object, and it goes, oh, level manager script. Okay. So I can click level manager script, and this is the start button, so we want to load game. Now we're going to do the same thing for the quit button. So if you want to take on that challenge, you could pause the video and go ahead and do that. If you have any trouble with that, right, and you're back to playing the video, we're just going to recap over how you do that for the quit button. We select the quit button. And on the on-click, click the plus, drag in our level manager, go to no function, level manager, and we want to just quit. There we go. Now we have those assigned, we can save this, Control S to save. Okay, now that we've got the start button and the quit button, what about our build settings? So let's go File, and then Build Settings. Now when you pop this up, you get this handy dandy menu that pops up here. And for right now, we're just going to do PC. And the default settings are all fine for the moment. And I've already done this once. Let me refresh this. I previously had a sample scene here. And so what we can do, I can just right click and remove selection since I don't want to use any sample scene or test scene at all. So get rid of that. Now we have our main menu open, and there's a reason for that because right now we're planning when we start the game, that's our first menu. And the scenes in build works like an array. We have element numbers. So we're going to click add open scenes, and you'll see in our scenes folder, it gets the main menu. That's where the scene is saved at. And it is element 0. That's our starting point, right? Now we have our main menu is 0. Next, we need to add in level 1. So I'm going to go to my scenes folder here. And all I have to do is drag level 1 in. And you can see level 1 is element 1. Yes, I love it. It's great. It's good. We got 2 scenes. Beautiful, right? And then if we had a game over, we could put our game over last, or depending on if we had any other scenes. And that is good to go for right now. So what we can do now is just exit out of our build settings, because now that we have our build settings set up, we can actually play test this without any errors. So we click play. We get our start button, quit button. If I click quit and we go to console, you clicked quit. Right, we can come back. And there we go. Now a couple UI pieces. Let's go to our main menu canvas, select that, and you can right click UI, and we're going to want to do an image, and this would be where we would use this for our background or any graphics that we want to have on our start screen. And so right now I'll just create an image, and I'm just going to call this white background or whatever color you might be using. And I'm going to zoom out here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my rect transform. And if we click the 3 dots and do reset, you'll see it doesn't do anything. This is the default for that. Now, if we click our anchor points, there's this option down here for stretching. If we click that, it sets the anchor points to stretch to each of the corners. But we want to have the whole image fit our canvas. So if we hold shift and click, right, it doesn't do anything because that's only setting the pivot point. But if we do shift and alt, so what we want to do is if we hold shift and click to set our pivot to the center, right? Shift is just setting our pivot point. You notice alt is going to set the position. So what we're going to do is hold alt, but for this we're going to do the stretch. Notice the icon here is different where it's going to stretch the image top and bottom, left and right. So we click that. Now it fits our canvas perfectly. Now the problem now though is our white background is in front of everything. So if you use something like Photoshop, this is confusing because it's on the bottom, but yet it's being shown on top, okay? So it's kind of backwards from Photoshop. So we want this in the background, so we need it to be at the very top. So we put it at the top, and it's behind everything. So now we have it in the background. So just like that, if we wanted to add in some graphics, we could also add in another image. And this here can be wherever we would like it, maybe after the background. This could maybe be our image title or our game title. And you'll see our image component has a source image sprite. This is where we want to put our graphic later on that we connect it. So I already have one, but I don't have it packaged up for the game for everybody to use yet. But here I have this Rolleeball title screen. All I simply did for that was drag this into the sprite. I should mention any image that you drag in and create later on, the texture type can't be default for this 3D game. We have to change the texture type to sprite because we're using this for, hey, looky there, UI. Right, so we do UI, apply this. Then I can go to my game title and drag that in. Voila. And then we got some cool things like preserve aspect ratio that makes it fit. And there we have it. I can lay it out and it preserves the aspect ratio. And we've got this white boxed template here for our main menu. So save that.